I want to say thank you to our Segas for the coffee right now before we even get started. I want to thank our panelists for coming out to share with us today. My name is Kelly Haley, and I'm a reference librarian here. I also work in our nonprofit and small business resource center. That's how I am involved with this event. Afterward, I would ask you, there are some little comment slips on that back table. If you would fill one of those out and drop it in the box right outside that back door on your way out, it's really helpful to us. We draw on those comments for our future programming, so we do appreciate that. Our moderator today is Melanie Palmer, sitting right here. She is the owner of M. Palmer Consulting. She's been raising money for nonprofits as a staff member and as a consultant for about the last 14 years or so. She is currently serving as president of the Arkansas chapter of the Grant Professionals Association. Very knowledgeable lady, and she's done a lot of programming for us. I'm very grateful that she's here leading us today, so I'll turn it over to you now, Mel. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelly. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. Well, thank you all for coming to meet the funders. I wanted to thank, first of all, the Fayetteville Public Library and Kelly specifically for organizing this event for us every year. A round of applause. This is the first year we've been in person, as Kelly said, in a couple of years. We had a couple of virtual events, and so I'm glad to see all of you here. And if you're watching on the live stream, welcome to you as well. Glad there are several ways for folks to hear what our panelists have to share with us today. So we're very excited to have a wonderful panel, and I want to thank all of our panelists for giving their time this morning. And it's like we're living in an age where it's you have to like make a really big effort to go somewhere, right? So thank you to our panelists for being here in person this year. If you've never been to this event before, what we have done is asked you to submit questions ahead of time, which many of you have done for our panelists. And what we're going to do then is have each panelist introduce themselves and their organization, give us just kind of an overview of how they operate, what they fund, what their missions are. And then we're going to dive into some of the questions that you all submitted. We won't have time to do everyone's questions, but Kelly and I have done our best to combine your questions to ask the ones that were most popular. So hopefully we will touch upon what you're here to learn about. So I want to thank each of our panelists for being here, and I'll just introduce them by name and then let them give introduction to themselves. So we have Annetta Tyree from Arkansas Community Foundation. We have Nikita Reed from Arkansas Soul. We have Sandra Carrasco from Forge. Jackie Hancock from United Way of Northwest Arkansas. Rachel Spencer from the Walmart Foundation. And Becky Flynn from Women's Foundation of Arkansas. Becky gets the prize for traveling the farthest to be with us today. So I'd like to start, Annette, if I could start with you, just ask each panelist to introduce themselves and their organizations. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to be back. I sound really loud. Hopefully I'm not overly loud. I've done this event a few times in the past. Years ago, I used to be at Tyson Foods in corporate grant making for many years, but now I am the Northwest Arkansas Program Officer at the Arkansas Community Foundation. So I've been on board close to 9 months, so I'm not afraid to play the newbie card today. If you guys ask something I can't answer, but I'll get you an answer later. I don't want to give you wrong information. But just a little bit of information if you're not familiar with what a community foundation is and what that does and how it may be different from other foundations that you're accustomed to. So unlike most private foundations that may be funded primarily by one wealthy donor or family or a successful corporation, a community foundation is made up of several philanthropic funds created by people from a particular area or to benefit people in a particular geographic region, so in this case, Arkansas. The Arkansas Community Foundation was founded in 1976, so they've been around for a really long time. Our central office is located in Little Rock, and then we have 29 affiliate offices throughout the state. Those affiliates have their own executive directors. They have their own board of directors. And the purpose of that really is for very hyper-local giving, right? So we are really looking at what communities need on the ground in those communities and letting local people make some of those decisions for their grant making. We help donors create funds. We have donor-advised funds, which are really charitable distribution funds that they can place funding with us. It can be kind of that benefit of a shared service model. So for philanthropists like you and me who may be giving our time and money to organizations, and that does mean we're philanthropists, but we may not have the need to have our own private foundation, or we don't want to go to the expense, right, to have administrative costs and all of that. So the community foundation can handle that for donors. And you can, make one charitable contribution a year, get your tax deduction, and that's done for you for your tax need for the year. And then donors, as they go, can request grants be made to any 501c3 organization in or out of Arkansas that they choose. So our funding is very broad-based, and most of our grants are those donor-directed grants. Then our affiliate offices also run grant cycles. They're called Giving Tree Cycles. They may do that 1 or 2 times a year. Some of them may have specific focus areas, and so I would kind of direct you to our website to look that up, find out what affiliate is in your area, what their focus might be, and when their grant cycles run. And be sure and sign up for our grant newsletter on our website, and through that we'll send out when we have any grant opportunities, because we do occasionally do foundation-directed grant cycles that may be regional or statewide with a very specific targeted focus. Those may be funds that we have available from a fund and something that we're leaning into with the foundation, or it could be a collaboration of different funders who want to come together. We'll serve as an intermediary organization and run that grant cycle for them. So I'm almost done. Just one little bit about my role as Northwest Arkansas Program Officer. So I've mentioned our central office in Little Rock and then our affiliates throughout the state. This is our only regional office here in Northwest Arkansas. And my colleague Jody Dilday, who many of you probably know, Jody started this regional presence about 4 or 5 years ago as our VP of Development here in this area. And so my role as a program officer, again, is new, and it's just tried to help build our program team. I will work with them on statewide and regional needs as well, but also focus on the needs in Northwest Arkansas to get to know all of you and to understand our nonprofit landscape here in the area. If we have donors with a particular interest, that we can connect them to you. So the more I know about what everyone does, really, the better. So we may not always have grant opportunities, but one of the things that we see our purpose as is connecting everyone and serving as kind of that, Jody likes to call it philanthropy concierge for all of you. So that's the Community Foundation in kind of a long nutshell. But
Thanks so much, Netta. That's a great overview. Nikita, can I hand it down to you?
Sure. Nikita Reed. I'm the founder, executive director of Arkansas Soul Media. We are a nonprofit. We are a digital media company that is geared toward BIPOC Arkansans, and BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So anything we publish, all content, media, films, podcasts, they have the BIPOC Arkansan in mind. And we are talking to diverse audiences primarily. I am a professor. My last day is actually June 30th. I have a lot of students who's like, I wanted to take your social media class. I'm sorry. Go read Arkansas Soul. Anyway. But I am a professor, assistant professor at the School of Journalism and Strategic Media at the University of Arkansas. And I just saw, as you're training young, upcoming journalists, you see this stark gap in diverse communities. Coverage, not even just Black communities, Latino communities especially, Asian communities, they feel invisible. So that's there's a lot of factors that went into the founding of Arkansas Soul, but that was the primary source, lack of representation, and also the nurturing of talent in media professionals of color. So we do like to produce the content, that's the fun part, but the other side, the more meaningful side, is we want to get media professionals of color in the community and get paid, okay? Because we need them to represent. And just to wrap up my background, I'm originally from Peoria, Illinois. Spent most of my adult life in Memphis, Tennessee, and then went here for grad school. And then they got me to teach. But I spent most of my life in the nonprofit sector. My very first job was with Girls Incorporated of Memphis. So I've been writing with nonprofits. It's a passion of mine, and I just applied it to media. So thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. And then I will hand it down to Sandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Carrasco. I'm the Director of Latinx Business Development for Forge. Forge is the oldest microloan revolving in Arkansas. We have been around since 1988. We're based in Huntsville. We focus on entrepreneurship and small businesses, but we operate as a nonprofit. That help us have more control of our underwriting process when we're approving those small businesses. And then we also have collaborations with foundations and nonprofit organizations that align with our mission. And our mission is just bringing access to capital to those individuals that may not be ready to go to a bank, right? My background is engineering, went to work in industry, love it. Became a mom, and I have a moment of like priority changes, right? Decided to become an entrepreneur, and as a Latina, I didn't have someone to rely on. So I kind of had to do my research on myself. I'm a partner with my sister in the business, and I said, hey, we have to do better, and we have to help open the door to other entrepreneurs. I started getting more like connections to people. One day I met the executive director of Forge, reached out to me to become part of their hiring committee for the position I now have. And I was like, I don't want to be part of the hiring committee. I want to come and work for you. Apply for the position and I got hired. So I have been with them for 11 months. I love the job I do. When I was invited to the panel, I was like, I really don't know if I'm the person to go there because I've seen nonprofits and foundations in here. But there is a lot that we do together. So then I decided to say yes and come here. Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. We're very glad you said yes. Thanks for coming. Jackie, can I hand it down to you?
Absolutely. Yes, maybe y'all can hear me. I'm Jackie Hancock. I'm with the United Way of Northwest Arkansas. Most of you have heard of United Way. Many of you may not know that United Way has been around 91 years. I've been here the entire time. Feels like it sometimes, right? United Way is involved in a lot of different things throughout the community, the counties that we serve in Northwest Arkansas. Some of you may know that we run the 211 program for the entire state. That's a resource referral program. We were running that program primarily in Northwest Arkansas until literally the day the governor shut the state down, and that's the day that we decided that we would roll out 211 statewide. So we went from getting 250 calls for help a month to we're averaging about 3,000 calls a month now. So that program has grown exponentially, and we anticipate that by the end of the year we'll probably be at 4,500 calls a month, answering calls from Arkansans who need help in a lot of different areas. So that's one of the things that we do. The other things that we do, we're involved in the community in a lot of other different ways, including our grant making, which our last round of grants, we provided about $2 million worth of grants to about 30 organizations in Northwest Arkansas. We're primarily interested in early childhood development, self-sufficiency for children, those types of things. That has broadened a little bit into a more inclusive of some of the Alice families in the area, just by what we do. We will probably be broadening that into 4 buckets in the future, which will include health, the health area, income area, and more than likely stay in the education area, space as well. So our next round of funding might include some of those extra buckets that we've not been involved with in the past, but we're just seeing such a need in some of these other areas that we're probably going to be expanding into that as well, into that space. And of course 211 is obviously a space that we're going to be involved with statewide. So we're involved in a lot of different things. We consider ourselves collaborators, innovators. We don't solve all the problems, but we know a lot of people who can, and so we get those folks to the table and talk about that. So that's, in a nutshell, what kind of who we are, what we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Rachel?
Awesome. It's wonderful to be with you all here today. My name is Rachel Spencer. I work for Walmart, the Walmart Foundation. Should I turn this off? Over 2 years. Some of you may remember I got to be on the Zoom Meet the Funders last year, which was a real treat when we were all just still grappling with the pandemic in the height of response. But at the Walmart Foundation, we fund in 3 strategic areas in Northwest Arkansas, and those are building a culture of belonging, increasing access to healthier food for all, and economic opportunity and regional coordination. So those are the areas where we play in the most. We take a shared value approach to our philanthropy, whether that's global, national, or hyper-local. So that means we look at the areas where we can drive change as a company and use our business as a big lever for change and also complement with philanthropy. And I'm happy to talk more about our strategies throughout questions today. We also fund in a few different ways. So every year at the beginning of the year, we release our schedule for open requests for proposals that are aligned with specific funding priorities for the year. And then we also have invitation-only grants that we do, as well as a limited list of sponsorships and ways that we help our associates engage with the community. So we are a funder, but I always like to say too that we bring a lot of people here to the region as an employer. We love helping our associates think of ways that they can connect to and support the community. So we also want to connect associates that are interested in leadership opportunities, volunteer opportunities, with organizations that are making an impact here locally, because we view that as very mutually beneficial. So I tend to serve too as the air traffic controller for those kinds of requests internally. So really excited to be with you all today.
Thanks, Rachel. And Becky.
All right. I lightly tested this. Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Becky Flynn, and I am the Director of Development at the Women's Foundation of Arkansas. And so the Women's Foundation of Arkansas is focused on economic security and equity for women and girls in our state. And so there's a lot of great organizations doing amazing work for women and girls. We're focused specifically on economic security. So what does that look like? So on the younger girl side, starting 8th grade through college, we're really focused on creating opportunities for young women in STEAM programs. So introducing them to hands-on opportunities, introducing them to mentors in STEAM, specifically young girls, young women of color, young women from rural or persistently impoverished counties. So that is our focus for young women, because those are pathways to better paying jobs, which are pathways to economic security. And so it all comes back to that. So on the adult women's side, we are focused on a couple different things. Entrepreneurship as a vehicle for economic mobility. So business owners, connecting them with financial capital, social capital, technical assistance, all the things that women need for their businesses to grow and be profitable. Also focused on encouraging women to save for life and retirement, is creating economic security, less debt, creating a plan for the future. And those are kind of our programmatic side, but that's also what we fund. So we're a public foundation, meaning we raise all of the money that we grant. And so similar to the community foundation, we don't have a private foundation that we get all of our money from. We fundraise for all of the grants. But our grant making really reflects our priorities, our mission, our programs. So we're focused on economic security for women and girls. So we're a statewide foundation. We like to show that in the footprint of funding that we provide, and so we like to fund across the state. We have a request for proposals actually is about to open and will be open for a few months over the summer, July 1st to September 30th. And in addition to all that, we also conduct research. So we facilitate research with UA Little Rock or UCA, institutions that can do census-based research, statistical research, qualitative research. So in 2018, we did a research report on economic indicators for women in Arkansas, and that really opened our eyes to the entrepreneurship focus. In 2020, we did a research report on women of color business owners in Arkansas, and really opened our eyes to the barriers that these women hit in their lives, in their businesses, to really focus our work. So all of our programming and our grant making is focused on that, is a result of that research. So that's kind of who the Women's Foundation is in a nutshell. We are about to celebrate our 25th anniversary. We were founded in 1998, and yeah, it's exciting. So 2023 is our 25th anniversary. So we're looking forward to really promoting our statewide presence next year and reaching all the communities across the state with our work and what we do. So I couldn't be more excited to be here.
Thank you. Happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
We'll celebrate with you. Well, thank you all for that overview. I think the common theme that we're hearing is partnership and collaboration amongst all of you, which is wonderful to hear. So thank you for that. I think we're going to move into some specific questions for our panelists. Again, these come from the audience. We've just kind of compiled them and prioritized them. I've told our panelists that they are under no obligation to answer every one if they don't feel it fits them quite. Or if you'd like to talk about something else, you're welcome to do that too. But I think that the first thing, and maybe the most central thing that I'm hearing from all of you in terms of partnerships that you do with organizations or businesses. So our first question is, what does an effective partnership with a grantee or an applicant or a business look like for you? What does a strong partnership look like with your organization? Can I talk to you?
I'll go first. I would say open lines of communication and respect, and it goes both ways. We really operate with an open door policy. We're happy to take phone calls anytime. And again, while we may not always have a grant available to apply for, we like to be knowledgeable about all the work that everyone's doing in the communities. So we get together with our development team and do what we call project matchmaking meetings. So it may be things that get on any one of our radar as our program officers, that someone calls us up and has a need for. It can be anything, right? Any organization. And we can go to our development team and say, hey, we've got this organization. They have this need. Do you have any funder? Any donor who has a particular interest in that area. So I think for us, building partnerships is really an ongoing thing. It's continuing education about all the work that you're doing, and letting you reach out to us when you have needs as well. So the more connection and potential donor interest we might be able to provide is really what we're all about.
Wonderful. Thank you. Nikita?
I think I'll tackle this question, I guess, in acknowledging my own privilege. I am an educated Black woman. I'm a professor. So a lot of jobs come across our inbox, and I quickly learned that's how a lot of people get on. If you don't have a network, a lot of times you don't hear about these things. So you ever wonder how somebody got that job? They knew someone. And if you have a limited network, or you're in a community that doesn't have exposure to that, are you going to get on? So I'm always looking at my privilege and trying to connect people who wouldn't normally get access to different opportunities. And that's not even just with jobs, that's with contracts. Media communication people, a lot of us are freelance, and sometimes we depend on contracts, and it comes down to who you know. It even comes down to who gets access or knows about a call for proposal. I've gotten a lot of grant opportunities that if I didn't know someone who knew someone and got put on, I wouldn't have got that money. So you think about people who are minority-led and their limited access to opportunities. It runs deep for me, so I always like to look at my privilege and see how I can use that to help someone else, advance someone else. And I don't keep those to myself. I'm always reminded of the importance of network. So I'm all about vibes. If I see someone and I know someone who would be good fit for something, I'm putting them on because I feel like that's what I need to do. That's my responsibility.
Thanks, Nikita. Can I ask one follow-up question to your answer?
Yeah.
What if someone is in the audience thinking, yes, this is this is a connection I need to make, or this is a resource I need? What is the process for them getting in touch with Arkansas Soul or with you, or?
Well, it's twofold, right? So if it's like you're looking for work, what do? Know your strengths. If it's a project, an idea, you never know who knows someone. You know, that's what I'm starting to learn. It's just like, oh, I know somebody at that foundation, and it's perfectly aligned with that priorities. And I think that goes from a grantee's perspective. The strategy when I'm going for a grant or I'm trying to pitch a proposal idea, is this aligned with their business goals? Is this aligned with their priorities? Because that's going to make me much more successful. And I can take notes if I'm not successful. It's not so much luck. You know, it's understanding your purpose, your why, and aligning it to priorities and interests. I think that's like my best strategy for success, just moving forward. And that's with anything, you know, even if it's projects or partnerships, you want to align yourself to each other's business goals and then the audiences you're trying to reach. Does that make sense? Am I hitting on that? Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's great advice. Thanks. Sandra?
So I kind of just echo what these ladies are saying. For us, when we're going to partner with a nonprofit or like a foundation, just make sure that our values align, right? We need to make sure we're targeting the same population that we're serving. And then when it comes to financials, it comes with an emotional attachment a lot of the time for individuals. So we need to be really transparent with them, what is coming in the process, and then we expect the same from the foundations of the small businesses. Just because it's numbers, and we're talking about bringing food to the table for some small businesses. So we're going to be making sure everything aligns in the financials. We're going to look and be asking a lot of questions, so we want to have that open communications, and we focus a lot on relationship building, right? Because you're not going to have these conversations with just a random person on the street. So our approach is more like, hey, let's do more one-on-ones when we're serving small businesses, when we're doing partnerships with other nonprofits and other organizations. Just let's make sure we are on the same page, and we're targeting the same people, and we have the same population, and we have the same goals. So we both can benefit, and we're always looking for win-wins, right? We're not going to take advantage of anyone, and we don't want anyone to come and take advantage of us. We're still a small organization. So we're here to support others, and just helping. That's what we do.
Thanks, Sandra. Jackie?
So a partnership with us is really a partnership, and so when we make funds available to an organization, we have a whole set of metrics and benchmarks and other things that we mutually agree on, because the one thing that we want to be able to do is at the end of the grant period is to say that you've been successful. And so one of the ways that we can do that is to kind of project management that all along. And so we have benchmarks and metrics that we will follow, and then we have check-ins along the way to see how you're doing. If you need anything else, sometimes you may even we didn't give you enough money. So it just depends on what your project is, and we really like funding a lot of new ideas. So we like seed funding for a lot of projects. A lot of organizations have an idea, and they just need a little bit of seed money to kind of get going, and we like those kind of projects. And so, but those are really partnerships with us, and we have, if you run into an issue or you run into some things that you need help with, that we have a lot of in-house expertise in a lot of different areas, and if we don't, we know where to go get it to make your project successful. So that's our biggest thing, is when we grant money, we want to make sure that at the end of that funding cycle that you can say you've been successful, and that may even be to give you the capacity to go out and to grow it, and that's okay. So, but those are some things that we do in our grant making.
Thank you. Rachel?
We'll try this mic again. And really echo everything that has been said. Very much appreciate, comments around open door communication, two-way street of communication, and also just the openness and the alignment of business values too. If you ever have done communications with me, you will know that my attorneys don't actually let us use the word partnership. So, and that's really not a commentary on how we see grant making. It's just from where we sit as a company and what we're allowed to say. But I think I'll take a little bit more of a tactical, specific answer for this question, is that I think learning is really my vision of what a successful partnership looks like in a grant. So if you've been funded by us before, what have you learned from that funding, and how are you applying it to this next funding cycle? If this is a new project, like, what are some questions that you're grappling with? Like, what are some challenges that you anticipate you're going to come up against? What are some hypotheses that you're testing? Like, okay, we're going to do this program because we think if we do this, then this is going to happen, and we'll know it's successful if that happens or not. I think there's also one thing that's really helpful for me is thinking about it in terms of like clarity of, is this a core program, like a core capability that your organization does that you are continuing to support operations for? Are you refining that program? Like, say you had a lens on, trying to apply a DEI filter to your previous programs, and you learned, like, say you deliver show programming or educational programming, and you did a DEI assessment and you learned that there were these specific gaps where you didn't have, representation of diverse voices in your programming. So now you're applying for a grant, and I think an effective partnership looks like, well, hey, that last grant where you funded us to do that DEI assessment, we learned these 3 things, and we are seeking to operationalize those 3 things as part of this next cycle. So I think there is that, like, is this a core program where we're refining something? Or is this a new program where we're seeking to test and learn? And if you're going to test and learn something, then how do you know if that thing is going to be worth doing after that pilot phase as well? So I always am pushing on the learning piece of a project, and also like learning in a very pen to paper way too. Not every project has to have a fully fleshed out evaluation report, but you can think more creatively about it. Like, are you doing a 1-pager? Are you doing a briefing? Like, are you having a meeting with someone that is very intentional to share the learnings of a project? So that would be my additive theme is learning continually.
Thanks, Rachel. And I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think one of the things that's changed in grants work since the pandemic is that we're seeing so much more experimentation and innovation and doing new things. And I know historically some grant-seeking organizations are like, well, if what happens is not what we thought would happen, it's a failure, right? And so I'm love that you are emphasizing that the learning process is a lot of the point.
It is, and it's okay to say we tried a thing and it didn't work too, or like that. I think that is also successful, like saying, no, we're going to take this off of our plate. Also, if we didn't learn something during the height of the pandemic, like, you were doing it wrong. I think like we were all learning a lot. So.
Thank you so much. Becky?
All right. Well, I feel like it seems like we all shared notes before this, but I literally the first thought was, okay, an open line of communication. That is our number one thing. And, it's not like, oh, at the end of the year, I better submit my report to the WFA. We like to see, Susan went through this STEAM program and now she's excited about college. Here's what she says. Or it's, we had a really great program last week and here's some photos. And, maybe we have an event coming up and we would love for you to join us. And if it's in Union County or wherever it is, like, we're going to try to be there because we want to be there and we want to be in the communities where you guys are. And so just inviting us to things you're doing, using us as a resource. So if again, if you're struggling, if it's mid-year, mid-funding cycle, and you're like, WFA gave us all this money, but we keep running into this problem and that problem, pick up the phone and call us. Like, say, hey, can you connect me with somebody at Department of Education? Yes. Can you connect me with someone at the Capitol? Yes. Like, we have connections. We can call. We can pick up the phone and call just like you guys can. So we want to be a resource throughout the funding, not just writing a check. We also want to be able to call on you guys as a resource. So we want to say, who are you working with in the community? What organizations or what companies are really vital to your work? Can we sit down and talk to them? Because that expands our footprint and our ability to fund other organizations by creating those additional partnerships with you guys. So that is kind of our open line of communication, but really authentic communication. Not everything's fine here, but it's really not. So that is
No one ever does that. None of us have ever done it.
like the meme where the dog is there in the fire and he's like, "This is fine," and it's clearly not. So yeah, I think just being able to pick up the phone or send an email, but we love to see the photos or the testimonials throughout the year. Always really fun.
Thanks. That's wonderful. Our next question is, what are some common challenges you experience in working with your grantees or applicants or partners, and what can your partners, grantees, applicants do to overcome those challenges? And can I start with you, Becky, this time?
Sure, yes.
Or go the other way.
So I think a few things here, and it's probably super common. It's interesting. As a fundraiser myself, I apply for grants. I apply for funding from individuals. So I've run into lots of problems myself, but we all see technical issues are always a thing. I can't get my document to upload, or I can't get my letter of recommendation is late, or whatever. So just start early. I have to tell myself this all the time. Start early on the process. Our grant's open for over 3 months. There's plenty of time. Also, we see folks not knowing if they would qualify for our grant, or spending a lot of time. Not that our grant process is extensive. It's not. We try to make it all-inclusive but easy and simple. But folks take the time to apply, and it's really clear that it's just not our funding scope, or it's not the type of organization that we fund. And so I hate to see folks taking all that time to apply for the grant and it not being something that we fund. And so if there's ever questions about, would you guys be interested in this? Should I even take the time to apply? I've picked up the phone and called foundations and say, I really want to apply for this. Do we qualify? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say, I'm glad you called because I don't want you to waste your time. And so if there's ever anything that you're like, I really want to check in about that, we would love to talk to you. And honestly, a couple of people that picked up the phone and called, I'm like, so interesting to hear about your project. And then you get that extra, you remember their project and you get to talk to them about it. And so that's something that I would encourage you guys to do if you're ever on the fence about whether or not you qualify. And then I think just how to fund projects. So we fund for-profit. We fund Black women-owned businesses through some of our programmatic initiatives. We fund a couple of different ways, but through our grant-making process, we are focused on nonprofit organizations. So we have individuals apply sometimes. We have for-profit businesses apply sometimes. And so we can figure out other ways to fund them usually, or figure out partner organizations. But again, that's just a conversation of, what does your program look like? Is it something we want to fund? And how do we create an opportunity to fund that?
Thank you.
I would also like to say, start working on things early. Cyber grants will mess you up. It happens. Yes, thank you for that, Becky. And I think to add to that, the comment that Nikita made about how do you know when RFPs are due, that is so real. And I think that's a challenge that I hear about our funding is, how do I know, how can I be clear on what your strategy is and what you're funding against this year? And I'm here to tell you to please visit our website, particularly at the beginning of the year. Go to the What We Do Local Community Support section, and there is a little drop-down section for Northwest Arkansas. That's also why we make an effort to be at events like these and speak at other meetings. There is not a magic distribution list that you have been left out of. And if you've asked me about this, you're not the only one. We are actually working on that. That's something that we're learning and that I would love to implement, is to have something where we have more of a mailing list. That's not a capability we currently have. And so our website is really the best tool that we are using, like to communicate our funding deadlines and strategies. And if you have questions about what you see, definitely reach out, and would love to share more information about that. And then just, yeah, the tech thing is very real. Just, you know, we know it, we see it, we are empathetic, but also want to provide the advice that if there is a funding area that you're interested in, you know, I mentioned before, we make grants through these open RFPs, and we also make grants through invitation-only grants, but we have open information sessions that are open about a month before funding deadlines, and so we are making it a priority to have those sessions that are public and anyone can join, even if you just want to learn about, hey, let's go a click down on, you know, I went to this panel and I'm interested. You could register for a session and just listen in, because we go over like a general overview of our Northwest Arkansas strategy and then what we're funding against. And so that also kind of gets to the, like, is it worth applying to this or not? Another challenge that I'm seeing that I think really is more of an opportunity for us to grapple with, like as a nonprofit and as a philanthropic community in Northwest Arkansas, is that we as funders have articulated some pretty clear priorities, I think, around we need to be collaborating across the region. We need to be including folks that traditionally haven't been invited to these tables. And as a result of that, I'm seeing in some proposals, like organizations will be listed in a grant application. I'm not calling anybody out on this because I've seen it across a few different proposals. But if you're going to put like a nonprofit that really represents or works with or is led by a historically underrepresented or marginalized community in your grant application, I would prefer that those conversations already be in progress and you're not listing someone, because that starts to feel very tokenism-ist to me. And so I think that that's something, I just raised that as a question. I would love to hear feedback from other folks on the panel, because, you know, letters of support are another way that traditionally in grant proposals you can really reflect that, you know, transparency and authenticity to say, like, okay, as an organization, you know, I am partnering with you. They didn't just put my name. But I also acknowledge that that adds like a bandwidth constraint too. So open to creative solutions there, but that's just something that I'm seeing, and I think we all should just be really intentional about.
Thanks, Rachel. That's a great call out. Jackie?
So I think some of the challenges that we see in our grant making initiatives are people who.
We want you to turn it on.
Maybe that would help.
Boom.
Yeah, some of the challenges that we see are applications that come to us and maybe they're not complete, believe it or not. And so we look at them and we see that they might be good projects, but they're just not complete applications, because we may ask a very pointed question, and we get back a one or two sentence answer. And so we want to know the good, bad, and the ugly of everything. So tell us your story. I mean, tell us the story. Tell us why you're looking at this as an opportunity. Even if, to Rachel's point earlier, even if you have done some things in the past along that path and you have failed miserably, you know, but you've learned something along the way, and now you want to maybe pivot and try something else. Tell us that, because that helps us to know that you are, you're serious about this journey. So, I think that's one of the biggest things that we see is just applications that just come to us, and we want more information. And so, a lot of times we have to go back to the organizations and say, you know, we need more stuff. I mean, we need more material, more narrative, more summary. So, we get these folks to do that for us. So that's our biggest challenge. And And the reason it is a challenge for us is because we're typically on a pretty tight timeline in terms of our grant making, because our grants are awarded by people in the community. We have people on our grant making committees that are business leaders in the community and other leaders in the community. And so we are constrained by their schedules because they look and they read every single word of these applications, every single word. And so we follow a model of scoring these things through a rubric. And so, but they read every single word that you submit to us, and they are, at the end of it, there's usually one or two people on that committee that is a subject matter expert on your grant application. So that's why it's important to give us everything, because we have people in the community who will go to bat on your behalf. So that's important for us. So.
Great, thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, as I have been saying, we don't do grants, we do loans. But I kind of just have a follow-up on what Rachel was mentioning. When people hear my title, Director of Latinx Business Development, they come and they're like, hey, I have been working with the Latinx community and I cannot connect with them. And I ask, what have you been doing? Well, I translate the flyer. And I'm like, whoa, it takes more than a translation. So if you're going to be working with an unrepresented community, you need to go to the field and build those relationships, right? There is a reason why Force brought me to do the outreach for the Latinx community. You have to build the trust. You have to understand the problem. Something that for a long time I didn't figure out why I was adding value is I grew up in Mexico. I know how business are done in Mexico. I know how my parents did business, and I know how Latinos maybe do business here. But at the same time, I went to college here, so I kind of got involved in the system. So I'm able to see both perspectives. And at Force, a lot of the time, I'm educating both sides of the table. I'm educating my team saying, hey, this is not gonna work for me. We need to talk again and let's see, figure out a way that is gonna be able to work for my community. And then sometimes I'm working with loan applicants, and I'm like, this is not gonna pass on a loan. Like, you do need to register your business, things like that, right? So I work both ways. And if you are working with an unrepresented community, not just the Latino community, even Marshallese or Asian, you need to go to the field and you need to build those relationships with them. And that's all.
Thank you, Sandra.
Here. Like, what Jackie and Sandra just said, I'm going to look at this from three ways, right? As a grantee, as a funder. So Arkansas sold us, we're not giving $50,000 out or anything, but we might give $1,500, $5,000. So I kind of see it from that perspective. And even, committees I've sat on, where we had to determine someone getting scholarship money or something like that. So from funder perspective, and then from a communicator's perspective, like working for foundations and organizations that are looking to put out the call for proposals, y'all got to start showing up and showing out. Like, get a website, own your brand, and actually claim your space. I think a lot of challenges that some funders and foundations come across is they're looking for you. So don't rely on that Facebook page. Get your digital real estate together. Get your SEO together. Get a listing. And no matter how small and quirky you are, there's a lid for every pot. Okay, there's a funder for you. And so stay true to your mission. But I think nonprofit organizations need to start owning their brand more and putting themselves out there, because people are looking for you. And I mean, just in this past year of just working as a communicator only, and people coming to me at Arkansas, so like, where are the Black nonprofits in Northwest Arkansas? I'm like, oh my God, where are they? Because we want to write a story about them. And they might get a grant, and then you go to find out more information, and you can't find it. And they're doing amazing stuff. So I think these nonprofits really need to start owning their brand and shouting it out. Put out those press releases. We don't know what you're doing if you don't tell us, right? But the more, think about the press you get and think about your digital footprint. If people are looking for you, they're going to find you. That's all I got on that.
Thank you. That's great advice. Annette?
I would really echo what everybody said. I mean, and on my list had been things like technology, and if you're having problems with the application, reach out to us. We're actually in the process of getting some new software. We all know how painful that is, and learning that. So I would anticipate probably some glitches in the future next year as we're going through that. So it's just like pick up the phone if you're having a problem. I think also applications, someone mentioned incomplete applications. Sometimes that maybe not fully answering a question or telling your complete story throughout the application, right? Like marrying, if you're providing data, if you're providing some sort of thing you're measuring, try to connect that with your overall mission. Help people understand that might be reviewing these applications, and we have also volunteer committees as well at our affiliate levels. If we're running statewide grant programs, we pull in volunteers that are people that are working in that field or whatever, right? So they may not be doing this full time, like reviewing applications. So we need a really good, clear, concise picture and help them to fully understand who your organization is and what they do. Mirroring really what Nikita said too, like understanding what your primary mission is. Also, something I think is a challenge for all of us is how to demonstrate impact, right? It's hard. It's hard to know what to measure. It's hard to know, like, what you're supposed to report on. We're over here then asking you for a grant report typically about a year after you receive the grant, and maybe you're feeling like, I don't have enough data to demonstrate measurable impact at the end of a year. If you're struggling with that, give us a call, and we'll try to talk you through that, because likely there is something, right? There is some sort of progress or challenge, that you've been met with through that, and we'll be happy to help you in how you might report that, or how you might put that on your application on what you're going to measure, whether you literally are counting an increase in something, but also how did that increase in that thing lead to some sort of other impact over time. And then just one literal kind of housekeeping challenge we send out paper checks still. We get a lot of those. You'd really be surprised. They'll go weeks and weeks without being cashed. So check your mailboxes if you are anticipating. It happens. It happens every grant cycle. Right, so yeah, make sure. We all get, snail mail is not as much a thing anymore, so make sure you go check those mailboxes and let us know if you don't receive it. So.
Wow, that's great advice. That's kind of making my head explode just a little bit. Thank you. I have one more question that I want to ask, and then we're going to take a break. So I just wanted you to know a break for you is coming. But our most asked question, and the one that based on your responses you want to know the most of, is what do you consider your organization's role in promoting and supporting racial equity in philanthropy? So can we go back down this way, and then after we answer this question we'll take a little break.
Well, the foundation, and again, I'm fairly new on board, but they've always really been committed to inclusion, but they've been really leaning in, and this started a bit, I think, pre-pandemic. They were starting kind of this journey into DBIE and training, and things slowed down as they did for everyone during the pandemic, but we're really back in that, and we're doing DBIE training, diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity with our staff, with our state board, with our affiliate directors and their boards, and bringing people in to try to create this space for more open conversations, and having people really talk about it, and it's proving very insightful, and I think people are learning things that they didn't realize they even needed to learn. We've also been working with the Centers for Effective Philanthropy to do a survey. Some of you in the room may have received that. It went out to all of our grantees statewide, so anyone that received a grant from the Community Foundation in the last year or two would have received that, hopefully, if we had your correct contact information. But it was to collect race, ethnicity, gender identity, and LGBTQ demographics for us. Of the staff and the boards of organizations, as well as our affiliate boards. We also asked for that information from them. CEP, we're still waiting on that data to come back to us. It was over 600 organizations that would have received that in the state. They're going to come back to us with anonymous, aggregated information. We won't know who replied, what. So it is anonymous. We're not going to use this information to penalize anyone. We're not going to use this information to help us make our grant decisions right now. It really is to help us just understand what our communities look like and what those organizations that are doing work in the communities look like. Does their makeup reflect the makeup of the communities that they're serving? And so we're trying to really be proactive as we see our role as the community foundation. To really serve all Arkansans, we want to make sure that we're doing that. They'll be comparing some of that data in their reports to census data in that area, so we can look at the census data in that county, and then are those boards and organizations reflecting that? So it's just going to help inform us a little bit. If there are gaps, if there are work we need to do with our affiliate boards, do we need to build different types of relationships in those communities? And then I will just say, it's been really refreshing. I think Philanthropy in general is having a lot of conversations about how we can do no harm, right? Like, how have we been asking people? What hoops have we been asking people to jump through in their applications and in their reporting? How can we simplify those processes? How can we make sure we're not putting up barriers, that prohibit people from even applying? They may read about the grant, they may think, oh, maybe we could, qualify for that, but I don't have the bandwidth or the technology to fill that out. So we're really trying to look at everything we do with and we see that as a DBIE lens, because a lot of those are smaller organizations that are serving more diverse communities that have those challenges. Sometimes they have a lot of volunteers on board, and they're like, I don't have time to fill out this really in-depth application. I don't understand it, perhaps. I don't have the technology to do it. So we're trying to simplify those things and work with people if they do have those types of challenges. And again, as we talk with other funders, I really see Philanthropy as a whole looking at that much, much more, and I think trying to help hold each other accountable to what we're asking our applicants to provide.
Thank you. That's great. Nikita?
So DEI naturally is built into our foundation as Arkansas Soul. It's the whole reason we exist. So my purpose every day is to keep building our audience. We're still small, we're still growing, but eventually we want to be a go-to source of information. So when Arkansas Community Foundation comes to me and say, hey, can you put out this story? We're looking for X, Y, and Z nonprofits in the Black community. We have the audience for that. Because my time spent in the nonprofit sector, I've learned, and this goes for minority-led nonprofits and then also Black and brown philanthropists, you have to hit the right channel. So when I was at Alsac St. Jude, where we had a $1.1 billion annual fundraising goal, right? They were like, well, how do we get Black philanthropists to give? Well, they're not going to go to a big and rich concert, So, right, and that was an actual, it's like, So there are Black philanthropists, there are people with disposable income, and I think you need to look at the channels, you need to look at how you're meeting people where they are. And I think a lot of times in philanthropy, you get stuck in what you think has worked, and you don't keep up with the trends, you don't keep reevaluating your audiences and showing up where they are. I'm a content strategist, so I'm always thinking about the audience first and how you marry that with business goals, et cetera. So applying that principle, we're thinking about, okay, what's the goal? We want to reach Black philanthropists and we want them to give. Okay, so instead of the tried and true, we're going to go to church. Well, you know what? I'm agnostic. I have disposable income. I don't have children. How are you going to reach me? These are the real questions. So you apply that to potential grantees. Are they going to be reading Cosmo and Vogue, or are they going to be reading Essence and Ebony, and maybe we get smarter about the voice and tone and the imagery and language and the ad spin. That's the level I'm thinking at. And then with Arkansas Soul, I want to meet them exactly where they are, and I want them coming to us. So it's much easier. Walmart Foundation, when you have something going on, we're already talking to these communities. And we're increasing that pipeline. So I know I feel like I'm rambling.
You're not. This
Okay.
is great. Keep going.
But really think about your audience and meet them where they are, and don't think about yourself and how you're going to get information. If you really want to reach these communities and you want to include, you want to increase your racial equity. I don't even remember the question, girl. But like she was saying, get in the field, show up, but also meet people where they are at the end of the day.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yes, so at Forge, as I say, our mission is access to capital. So we're bringing individuals that are traditional unrepresented, and we're bringing them to the financial system, right? So that's part of what we do as an organization, but a lot of the time it will involve educating and the technical system we provide for these individuals, because you just don't know what you don't know, right? So sometimes it's not about racial equity, is about knowledge and giving them the power to make their own decisions, to be able to read their own financials. That's what we focus the most. And then we try to be intentional when we're doing our outreach. And I see the power of media. As we work with our PR agency, the first question I was like, who is on your list for the Latinx community? And as I review the list, I'm like, there is no one. So let's add the people. So again, don't just have like as a strategic bullet point on your plan. Just make sure you are getting the job done. Just make sure you are going there. Just make sure you are reaching to these communities and bringing everyone together. It's easier to say it than to get it done. As I said, I do a lot of the outreach for Forge, and the first 2 months I was there with the organization, I questioned myself. I'm like, I'm the Latina, I'm the one that's supposed to know what I'm doing, and I did have those challenges too. I'm like, what is missing? So it was a lot of getting to other organizations and ask, hey, what have you been doing? Mm-hmm. What I learned is keep it simple and keep it open for them to come and reach out to you. Don't be selling something to them. Do the job, and then they will come and trust you and reach out to you for the help. That's all I have to say.
Yes. Thank you. Jackie?
Turn this on again. So, I said earlier that we've been around for 91 years, and in that 91 years, we've really been sort of in this space without being, touting ourselves as being in this space. We've been in communities that are disparaged and underrepresented, and for 91 years. So we've been doing this as a practical matter. So our team went through some initial DEI work a couple of years ago, and now that it's expanded at the board level and some of our key volunteers. And so some of the conversations that have come out of that have been really interesting. And so one of the things that we're in the middle of, we're having conversations and discussions right now with some key partners. A lot of you have called our office and said, hey, we're trying to expand our board, and we need people of color on our board. And do you have anybody in mind that you could recommend to us? And we recommend people, but the problem is that the people that we recommend, they're already on 8 or 9 other boards, right? And so what we think that we're doing is we're convening some conversations in our office with some other organizations, and what we're trying to figure out is, can we bring together these young people of color who are in our community, who are bright, articulate, smart, but they don't know anything about nonprofits. So can we train them? Can we put them through a training program? And can we get them ready to serve? And so we're having those conversations now. So my hope is that within a year from now, we will have a pool of people who have been trained by United Way in nonprofit board obligations and experience and everything that has to do how you run a board. so that when you guys call us, we'll have a pool of people that we can recommend to you. So that has come specifically out of our DEI work. So that's, rather than just sitting around talking about things, and which is good, but from our end, this is where the conversation has led us. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to be able to do that. So you'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure, because we're in the middle of those conversations now. So
Thank you for letting us know. That's exciting. Rachel?
Keep me posted on that, Jackie. I'd love to talk more about that. I also want to underline that what Nikita mentioned about being aware of your audience is really good advice for comms, but also programming, just in general, too. So we have a few specific funding priorities in this area, and I want to go through them to just make sure that everybody is aware and knows what resources are out there. Nationally, we have a Center for Racial Equity at the Walmart Foundation that is deeply invested in advancing Black populations against finance, health, criminal justice, education, and also racial solidarity, which includes members of the Latinx and Asian community as well. We have a blog series about this that's on our website that has some really interesting stories about how we're funding against this nationally. It's not only really critical work, it's really cool and thought-provoking. My opinion, I think you will likely share it if you check it out. So check out those blogs. And then this past fall in September, we announced a continued commitment to building a culture of belonging in Northwest Arkansas. And some of you may have been familiar with the Pilot True initiative that we co-funded with the Walton Family Foundation. We learned a lot from that pilot. We did a lot of community listening before refreshing our strategy this past fall, and decided to focus on belonging, but still including a really important focus on accelerating DEI in the region as well. So within our culture of belonging strategy, we are looking to improve trust in and experience with institutions essential for high quality of life. That's nonprofit, government, and education. And then we are also hoping to really build empathy in our community. So this includes a new work stream around bridge building and allyship. And we actually have open requests for proposals this fall where we're hoping to support bridge building and allyship projects. One thing that I also think we need to sort of grapple with as a region is, what does it mean to truly be a region where everyone belongs? And some of the things, because I have a colleague that on my community resilience team that leads a body of work around inclusive communities nationally, and like everyone is grappling with this. We haven't solved like racism or tension. Like I think it's something that we have a real opportunity in our region to think about, because we have resources, like we have, funders that are committed to this work. We have really talented individuals that we're all trying to lift up. But some of these definitions of like, what does it mean to be a region where everyone belongs? What does bridge building mean here in Northwest Arkansas? The definition that we'll be using for bridge building is, we'll share more about it in that info session this fall that we're going to have, but we're really thinking about like, how are we bringing together groups from distinct identities, like honoring and acknowledging the differences between groups, but also creating a space for people to connect authentically around shared goals or something that's meaningful to all of us. And so more on all of that, but I think that these are things that it's okay for us to be grappling with definitions and learning together. And then lastly, I'll say that, or two more things, like we apply a DEI lens across our other programming too. So when we're thinking about regional coordination, we want to make sure that that our projects are trying to meaningfully incorporate folks from communities across the region. I think there's a rural lens to that too. Like there's, a lens of racial, geographic, gender identity. There's a lot of different types of diversity baked into that. And that goes for our access to healthy foods work too. We've always prioritized underserved populations in that. And then the last thing I'll say is just that ask for support if you need help as a nonprofit grappling with this. Like, this is something, like, we have funded a lot of assessment work in the region on DEI. We have funded implementation work. So if you need additional dollars to hire a consultant or to do that work in your own organization, ask for it from your funders.
Thank you. Becky?
All right. Well, so at the Women's Foundation, we are, of course, focused on gender equity, but really are strong believers that there can be no gender equity without racial equity. And so that's reflected in a lot of ways throughout our organization. We finished a strategic planning process in 2020 and then took that through a DEIB lens. So made sure, and we got funding from the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation for that. Like, we specifically asked for funding. So there are dollars out there if that's something that your organization wants to do and that's a priority. I think that opens the door for funding for looking at what you're doing through a DEIB lens. Also, I want to talk briefly about our programming because it relates to how we fundraise. So our programming is focused on, so for example, we've got the Tawana Bird Summer Internship Program. And that is an internship program for college-age women of color who are pursuing careers in STEAM fields. And so obviously research shows there's an enormous disparity between, for women of color in STEAM careers. And so it comes down to, we reach out to companies that we trust. We reach out to companies that we have partnerships with, and we're like, what are you doing in this lens? You know, we feel like we're not doing enough. What are you doing? We want to do more. And so our trusted partners say, we also want to do more. We will invest in this program. And so we work with, right now it's 8 companies in Central Arkansas that are invested in creating a diverse and equitable workforce, creating a place of belonging, creating a honestly more competitive workforce. They're like, we want these people at our workplaces. We want them to feel welcome. We want them to stay. We want this top talent here in Arkansas. So they invest in this program. We match interns with these companies. But at the end of the day, we're creating those relationships with those companies because we have shared values. And so those companies invest in that program, but they invest in our greater work. So they invest in us being able to invest in organizations, if that makes sense. They say, we see what you're doing, we want you to fund other people trying to do similar work. And so I think the work that we do for racial equity, for gender equity, that intersectional work helps us fund other organizations doing that. So we do create priority for organizations that are funding women and girls of color or women and girls in rural counties. So really focusing on creating geographic diversity in these fields that we're focused on, creating economic diversity, socioeconomic. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I feel like I am rambling, but I think that what we've learned is creating those relationships with people that have those shared values, and that's not even just foundations like us that are sitting at this table. That's the companies in your communities, that's individuals in your communities, and having these open conversations. And then the last thing I'll say is we're really focused on our partnerships. I think I mentioned how important that was to us earlier, but people like Arkansas Soul, people like Today's Communique, Urban League, Mosaic Templar, like there's so many partnerships that we have just from the work that we do that we send out our grant application and we're like, please share this with your community that doesn't follow the WFA. Like, we know the demographic that follows us and we know it needs to diversify. So we use our partners and we're like, this is an opportunity for all of us to come together. And so I would encourage everyone to look for those resources in your community, look for those papers or those online resources where opportunities like that come, and just follow their e-newsletter, follow their daily updates, because that helps them with sponsorship dollars, but it helps you with sponsorship dollars. It's a win-win-win-win.
Thank you so much, Becky. Thank you to all of our panelists for talking about the work that you're doing and what's coming up. A lot of exciting things that we will want to follow, so thank you. We're here until 11 with our panelists, but I do want to take a brief break. So I'd like to reconvene. Can we reconvene in about 10 minutes, 10:25? That'll give us a chance to refill our coffee, etc. If you're not familiar with the library, if you haven't been here before, there are restrooms right out here, water fountains right out here, coffee in the back. So we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Ahead and get started on the second part. We're here until 11, about half an hour more. The second sort of group of questions that you all wanted to know were a little more specific to applications themselves. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to answer those, or if you don't have a particular application, feel free to take the question however you'd like and talk about whatever's on your mind. And then we are going to wrap up today's session by letting our panelists have an opportunity just to share any announcements they have or anything that they want to say that they didn't have the opportunity to say. I want to make sure you get your questions asked and our panelists have the chance to share what they want to share. So that's where we'll go next. So first, we had a lot of questions that were some iteration of this. All of you, when you have a grant application come in through your grants process, what makes an application or an applicant stand out to you? You know, what makes something, what catches your attention, or what makes a proposal stronger than others to you? So can I start with Becky?
Sure. So for us, for me in particular, but for our entire review committee, it's the details that really stand out. So it's that the applicant has really thought through all of the details of a program, not just has a really incredible idea, because there are a lot of really incredible ideas, but the logistics behind the program that you're applying for. If it's a new program, have you thought through how X, Y, and Z will result in A, B, and C? Like, what are the actual details, not just there's a need, because we know there's a lot of needs. And so we like to see that there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this, and that it's a community designed program, so that the people that you're serving, their lived experiences have been considered in the design of the program. Again, especially if it's a new program or if it's a continuation, that, you know, if you're serving a specific community, that you've sat down with that community and had those conversations about what's important to those folks, what they are looking for, what they need. So really involving that community that you're serving in the design and including them as leaders, not only asking them for advice, but making a seat for them at the table, at the head of the table, making them the leaders of the program. And so I think that's really, and I think to Rachel's point, like the letters of support, that's something that we ask for in an application, and just to show that like you've done the work, done the groundwork, people are on board, it's an idea that the community supports and that participants will actually be involved in. So that's really important to us. And then the proof of capacity is really important to us. So what I mean by that is, if you receive this funding, do you have the staffing to make it happen? Do you have the time to make it happen? The other resources, it's not enough just to get the funding, but we really like to know that if we do fund an organization, because the grants that we make are not enormous, but so there a lot of times it's to an organization that has maybe 1 staff member, 3 staff members, so it's making sure that the capacity is there. I think there's a lot of organizations that want to do a lot of things, but if we write the check and can serve as a resource, can your organization or your partnership with other organizations, do you have the capacity to make the program happen? So those are, I think there's a lot more than that stands out, and I'm sure other people will touch on those things, but for me, those are the main things that I look for, and of course that it aligns with our mission and our goals and our funding priorities. But as far as things that you guys can control, those are the things that we look for.
That's all very solid advice, and I agree with all of that. I think some things that I read for too are just the logic of a proposal. Like I call it in my info sessions like the through line of, you know, does the problem that you're trying to solve really linked to the objectives you're driving towards, and is that supported by your work streams and how you're measuring success? So just it sounds really simplistic, but it actually is harder to say more with fewer words. And so I think that's something I want to lift up, is just the logic of how it all kind of nests and builds from each other. A strong sustainability plan is another thing. Like I'm applying for another grant with you is not a sustainability plan. I know you think it, I know, but I think like thinking, you don't have to have all the answers answered, like that's why you're doing the project, but like having a plan for like what's gonna happen to the work after the grant, and like just being thoughtful about like are you diversifying funding, like, you know, what are some of those things that you're learning and going back to that. Also something that I think is really sort of more core capability and less stands out, but we also just read for governance too. So for some of those nitty gritty, like, does the name in your application match what's listed on your tax determination letter? Do you have a tax determination letter, or do you not? And it's in a filing cabinet from 10 years ago. Like, some of that stuff actually is like harder and takes more time than we can give it credit for. It also depends on if you're nonprofit, like if you've undergone leadership transitions, or like if it's just you writing grant proposals versus if you have development staff. Like, sometimes those governance pieces can slip through the cracks, and so we do pay attention to those as well.
Thank you.
So I love what Rachel said about saying more by saying less. We like applications that are clear, concise, tell your story, what you're wanting to achieve. Because remember, our proposals that you send to us are not just read by us, and we probably, staff already knows your organizations, because we talk to you all the time, and we're in meetings with you, and we know what you're doing. The proposals are actually being read by community leaders, so some of them may know nothing about you. So we need you to tell us everything. Like I said, we need to know your story and what you're trying to do, but clear, concise, to the point proposals are the best, and also the ones that, especially ones that are addressing community needs, gap. If you've done any kind of gap analysis or anything like that, that shows us where the needs are and what your proposal will do to address those, maybe to solve some of that. That's important for us. So,
Thanks, Jackie. Sandra?
I really don't have a lot to say. I usually read business plans instead of grant proposals, but I have the same. When I have a business plan, I want to have more answers than questions at the end. So, and we like short business plans. 5 pages, 10. Sometimes we get more. We still have to read it, but that's it. I'm just comparing a grant proposal to a business plan. I don't know if that's a fair comparison. I think nonprofits do a lot more work, and a lot of time maybe harder to measure. And those metrics, I know they put a lot of weight on it, but that's not my area, guys. So I can help on this one too much, okay?
I think I could speak as a successful grantee and also someone who's sat on different committees that have awarded funds to different applicants, but follow the instructions. Sometimes the folks who win, like, it's not even something that wowed us. It's just like they were like the few people who actually followed the instructions and gave us what we asked for. And sometimes it's that simple. A step further than that, if you can innovate in some way and get folks excited, that can score you points as well. Take something that's tried and true and apply it to a different demographic, or look at it from a different way, and breathe some life into an idea or project. And then, like, the last advice is, and I've gotten better at this, and then looking at other proposals too, really know your budget. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Break it down, because you can definitely get what you asked for, but make sure your budget makes sense. I'm less likely to award a $10,000 grant when you're asking for $5,000 for a laptop and like $1,000 for, what I mean? Like, make it make sense, make it realistic, but absolutely don't be afraid to ask for what you need. Just break it down.
Thank you. I would say, again, so it's the benefit of going last. I would agree with really everything everyone has said. The same with us. Now, with the Community Foundation, when we talk about grants, basically any donation that a donor requests from one of their funds, one of our fund holders, we consider those grants. So the bulk of our grants don't even go through a review process. They're a simple request from a donor. For our grant applications that we have, whether that's at the affiliate level with our Giving Tree grants or some of our larger statewide grants, Same thing, keep it simple, keep it concise, keep a clear thought process throughout your application. Because again, much like Jackie said, we've got committees of volunteer reviewers as well. So to help them understand your thought process as they read through your application, right, and tie it all together. I think a combination of, the relevant data in the financials and things we're asking, but also what is that human impact, right? People have to feel a reason that they also want to support your project as well. So demonstrate that. Show evidence of fiscal stability, that your application can show that you're going to be a responsible steward of the funds and a reasonable budget, to Nikita's point. If you've got some blip in there, you've got some crazy thing that happened in your financials, but there's a reason for it, explain that. Don't automatically think it might disqualify you, but give us an explanation for it. Certainly COVID may be one of those explanations, going forward for many people. So yeah, I think that's it. And again, don't try to make a square peg fit in a round hole. Read the grant requirements and the parameters of those grant. Make sure you would qualify to apply, and don't waste your time. If not, and if you are unsure, give us a call and ask the question. We're happy to let you know.
Thank you. So we're all going to write clear, concise grant proposals that answer all the questions and are for community-led programs, right? Yes. Thank you all for that. And I wanted to just pull out one thing that I think several of you touched on, but maybe we didn't explicitly say, which is that sometimes the person that you're working with that's advising you on your proposal is maybe not the person who is going to review it in the final stage. And so I know I talk to a lot of people who are like, I don't need to put this in there. Rachel knows that. We've talked about it. Well, it still needs to go in your application because she may not be the person that is reviewing it, or there are other people involved. So I just wanted to pull that out.
I like the one that doesn't have review committee.
It's okay. I'm just pulling that out because a few of you, I think, hinted at that. So the next question we had a lot of feedback on, and that's about performance measures. So grants often require performance measures, and I know a lot of people find that one of the most challenging parts of the process. What's the right performance measure, and how do we create that through logic that we were talking about? So can I ask you, what type of performance measures does your organization like to see in your grant proposals or your funded projects?
I would say, first off, just honest evaluation. What worked, what didn't work, what did you learn, how will you improve? Think about that, right? We with our grants, because we do, the bulk of them are really on the smaller side. So our average grant size is 5,000 or below. And then we may have some grant cycles with larger, some of those that we may have a collaborative of funders coming together. So we're going to scale probably that based on the size of the grants. We may not need as much in-depth information back from a smaller 2,500 grant as we will for a $25,000 grant. But think about, again, we talked about it a little bit before, like, you may be able to measure the number of people that you served. Or like, for example, we increased the number of books we were able to give to children for an early literacy program. But does your organization also have the ability, and you may not, but if it does, to say, well, we increased the number of books and that led to increased engagement by that child in class, or it improved their reading level or their reading scores, right? So can you go a little bit past just counting the numbers to what that human impact was as well? We don't discount too just kind of the human stories behind it as well. We want the performance measures, right? Because we're trying to meet goals too. We want to show that we move the needle a little bit. But, and we're also writing grant reports back to our funders, right? So we may have some large other foundations who have granted us funds. We're sub-granting that, and then we have to collect information from all of you. Then we have to aggregate that information and provide a grant report back as well. So we've got to show where things move the needles. And sometimes literally the human stories behind them can be very impactful, right? If it's some immigration or refugee-related organizations that are, maybe the funding helped them to provide more legal services. They literally were able to make more filings. But what did that actually mean to the person? How did it impact their life? And that's important to us as well in the work that we do.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can contribute to this because I've had to grow in understanding how media can demonstrate like progress or, you know, I guess performance measures. We had to look at it in a different way, and it did help, like on one particular successful grant we got, that we were working with a communication team from that foundation, so we were able to like learn from each other, you know. So and maybe it's a question for others on this panel. Are you learning from the grantees as well, like when you're trying to figure out what those performance measures look like, especially when you're trying to target certain demographics, or what does that look like? Is more of an exchange or a back and forth versus the funder telling you what they expect to see?
I kind of have a follow-up on that one. I said we do the loans, but we also receive grants. And one of our bigger grants is an SBA grant. And we focus a lot of what loans were made, how many capital we deploy, but we also started to report on how many people we talked to and they didn't actually ended up opening a business. That's another metric that was requested by them, because then from there they analyze like what is not being done, and then they start getting another strategic plan to be able to target them. And then sometimes people just don't need a business, so it's another metric. We measure like all the successes, but then we go back and track items that was not a success, and then we ask the question, what can we do? Or they ask us the question, what are you guys doing in this case? So I see it both ways in there. And again, not a lot to add in there, but let hear these masters of nonprofits.
So in our proposals, we want you to give us one metric or one outcome from a list of community indicators that we have. And we want you to track one of those, at least one of those, in your proposal. And so, like I said earlier, we're big on benchmarking and metrics and all of that kind of stuff. So when we talk with you about actually accepting the grant proposal, we may sit down with you and say, hey, we want you to also kind of track this as well, but that's just mutually agreed on after we as we're awarding the grant to you. So, because like I said, at the end of the grant cycle, we want to be able to proudly say that was successful. Because remember, our money comes from community dollars, and so we're very judicious about how that money is doled back out into the community, and we want it doled back out, but we want all of that money to be successful. So. We're sort of data geeks in the office about that kind of stuff, and when we report our outcomes, it's a lot of different kinds of measurements and looking at it from 6 ways to Sunday about how this was successful. So, but we do track a lot of stuff. So, but we want you to, in the proposal, we want you to give us at least one outcome that you're looking at from a whole list of community indicators that we have. So
I love the prioritization theme, and I'll follow on that a little bit, because I do think it's easy. I want to acknowledge how much work goes into the story collection part, and I think different funders are different in how much of the story collection we want to receive. And it's not to say that like the human impact is extremely important, but I would say for us, I'm trusting you as an expert in leading this work to be synthesizing that human impact into an insight that is driving those refinements to your programs and driving those refinements to your organization. And then be strategic about what you want to share. Like, give me one story, or because I will get grant reports sometimes where I can tell that there's been a lot that has gone into writing whole paragraphs, like of here's how we're documenting the impact to individuals. Because our reporting used to be a lot more like impact on the individual, impact on the community, impact on the region, and we've tried to pivot it recently to be a little bit more, what are the outputs and the outcomes that you, as the leader of this work, are prioritizing? I think we have more work ahead, hopefully actually over the next couple of months, next year, to think about how do we update specifically our metrics for our updated strategies in Northwest Arkansas. We haven't had a chance to update our metrics since we refreshed our culture of belonging strategy. I think that we have some work to do on that, and we actually would love some collaboration and feedback on that. So I think we'll think of the best vehicle, how to do that. But the other thing I wanted to note is just the difference between outputs and outcomes, because I'll share an example. So in our access to healthy foods portfolio, one thing that we see, there could be an emphasis on counting the things that you did programmatically is still really important. How many pounds of food did you distribute? How many meals did you provide? How many hours of nutrition education did you provide? But that doesn't quite get at the outcome of we're trying to increase access to healthy food. You might not be able to measure that full outcome in the course of your 12-month grant proposal, and that's okay. But thinking about something that you could measure as an intermediary indicator, one big example in this space is perceptions. Are we measuring, through a pre and post survey, somebody's perception about their willingness to try a healthy food? Or did they learn about a new healthy food option that they didn't know about before? So things perceptions and attitudes and knowledge building can also be good outputs that can be more realistic. Also, depending on the size of your project, that may or may not be realistic. And evaluation is another thing that you should write in your budget if you need more formalized support for.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So for the WFA, we try not to make either our application process or our reporting process too labor intensive, too extensive. We trust you as subject matter experts and trust you as leaders in the community. So we actually, to Nikita's point, we ask applicants what they want to track. We ask them what metrics they make sense for their program. When analyzing your program, what metrics do you plan to track impact, to evaluate your impact? So we ask applicants, and I think that's probably pretty common, but we also like to follow up on that go back to that at the end of the year and say, were you able to track these things? What does that look like? And so we learn important ways to track progress in different communities for different individuals, and that informs our work as well. So that's really helpful, but also, we love the quantitative data, who doesn't, and kind of those pre and post surveys. And gosh, to echo everything Rachel just said, it's, is it a program for girls, introducing them to cybersecurity maybe? And before this program, were they interested in pursuing it as a field? And how many participated? And after the program, how many are interested in pursuing this as a career? So, just stuff like that is easy to track, but it just takes a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra effort, but I think shows that impact. And we love the testimonials. We're one of those that are please send us the little photos. We'll crowd around the computer and look at how cute it is or whatever. But we like testimonials. We like the quantitative and the qualitative feedback on that. But we do like the metrics to be kind of a learning process for everyone. What worked, what didn't, what can we apply to our own programmatic work to really track changes. So that is, I feel like I'm an echo chamber for everything else everybody just said.
Thank you. Thanks, Becky.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Forgot. So going back to our grants, our grants, the vast majority of our grants are 2-year grants. And that's because the things that you guys are wanting to do, there's no way you can do it in a year. So our board several years ago said, let's make these 2-year grants because again, we want the dollars that we invest to be successful. So the vast majority of our grant programs are 2-year grants. The other thing that we've started doing recently is some of the grants, some of the proposals may not be funded by us. And that might be that they're just outside the scope of what we're involved with or want to be involved with. And so that doesn't that doesn't die on the floor. We take those and we shop those out because they're good proposals and they do meet a community need. They just may not be in our wheelhouse right now. So we will take those and we will shop those out. We'll let you know, and we'll go to other funders, other organizations that might be interested in it, say, hey, we just got this proposal that you guys might be interested in. So just because you submit something to us doesn't mean that if you don't get funded that's the end of it, because we do take those very seriously. We know you put a lot of work into it. They do meet a community need, and so we'll shop those out for you.
Okay, thank you. We're almost out of time, but I want to give our panelists just one final opportunity to provide us with any announcements that they would like to make. Not required, but if you have anything else you'd like to share that you haven't had the opportunity to, can I start with you, Becky, and work down this way?
I think I threw this out as a plug at the beginning, but our grant cycle is about to open. It opens July 1st, and it's open through September 30th. All of that information will be on our website, and all of my contact information is on our website, and it's womensfoundationarkansas.org.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I have an announcement about leveraging all our Walmart.org assets to help with your organization. So we are doing an associate matching campaign right now in honor of Walmart's 60th birthday, which is really exciting. And so we are matching 2-to-1 up to $3 million total and up to $10,000 per associate. So if you haven't heard of this before, my advice to you is to go to our website and learn more about it, but also start developing your own list of people that you know that are your existing donors or people that may be interested in donating to your organization. And then whenever you hear something like this, tell them about it. So share, you as a nonprofit, share this news like, hey, I heard there's an associate matching campaign going on right now. Like, this would be a great time to donate if you have any planned charitable contributions. We are working to more proactively announce these in the future, so don't ask me when the next one will be. I don't know yet, but we are trying to share them when they are. Also, if you aren't familiar yet with the changes we've made to our Volunteerism Always Pays program, please go check that out too. We've changed it to where you can redeem matching funds for just 1 hour of volunteer work. It used to be more, so that's a really exciting change. So we encourage everyone to be utilizing those programs too. I also want to share that I'm going to be transitioning to a new role on our team, and so you will be getting the opportunity to get to know another new face as the leader of the Northwest Arkansas portfolio, hopefully relatively soon. And so we will keep everyone posted on that, and we will also look for opportunities to introduce them to this community. And I'm just so grateful and honored for the privilege of having worked with you all for this past year, not going anywhere. I still live here, and I'm still in the team, and we'll be onboarding this person. So Erin Hogue is still around too. I see her all the time. So we're just growing the club here a little bit.
Thank you for sharing, Rachel, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So the only thing I would just say in terms of news for us is we are, again, in discussions about a lot of different things, but one of the things that we are keenly interested in is measuring the impact of what everybody in this room is involved with. We know that Northwest Arkansas, there are powerful nonprofits doing a lot of great work, but I want to know what the economic impact of that is in the community, and what kind of financial driver we as a community, as a nonprofit community, are putting back out, and how Northwest Arkansas is better because of us. And so we're having conversations about how we measure that, how we do that. So in the next 6, 8, 10 months, we'll be asking a lot of you for input and, to join those conversations with us. But I just know that is a huge number. I don't think anybody really has measured that in a long time. So we're going to take kind of a leadership role and sort of see if we can go down that path and see what that number looks like, because I think a lot of people would be shocked at how much value and money and volunteer time and things like that we're putting back out in the community. So I always go back to the It's a Wonderful Life movie with Jimmy Stewart, and what if he wasn't here? What if we weren't here? What the community might be like. And so we add so much value to the community as a collective group, and we're doing so much work. And I just want that documented, and if we can put a value to that. So we'll be having those conversations soon.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thanks for the invite. I learned a lot from this panel. If you think we have values or our missions align, I'm happy to collaborate. Something we have started doing is instead of paying maybe for marketing ads to Facebook or like big corporations, we like sponsoring events with nonprofits. That way we make an impact in the community. So if you think you are working on something that we may be able to work together, I'm happy to collaborate. You can reach out to me, to my email. Stop me by when we're there. I will give you my business card, but it's Sandra@forgefund.org. And thanks again for the invite.
Thanks, Sandra.
Well, I just wanted to end with an announcement that we recently got funded for a 2-year unrestricted grant for nonfiction documentary storytelling from the Color Congress Initiative. So we're in national funding now. Ford Foundation and MacArthur Foundation are backing us. So we're trying to put Arkansas on the map. Really excited about that. But on that note, I would challenge you all, and this is probably preaching to the choir, challenge you all to think about what comes to mind when you think about Arkansas, but also who do you have in mind when you think about who is an Arkansan? It might look like Sandra. It might look like me. So we need to really start pushing ourselves and thinking about those narratives, because Arkansas is a lot of beautiful things, and we're trying to share that narrative and those perspectives. So whenever you see Arkansas Soul story or content, that's our mission, is just trying to get BIPOC Arkansan narrative stories and culture into the mainstream. So appreciate it.
Interact with that content.
Yes.
That's right.
A like, a follow, a share is worth its weight in gold, okay? No joke. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. Nikita.
I don't think I have anything new to announce, but just some things I probably left out in talking about. One thing that the Community Foundation has is something called Aspire Data. I would encourage all of you to visit our website and look at those sections about Aspire. It's a dashboard of like quality of life information about health and wellness and education. You can break it down to county by county data, so it might be beneficial for you as you're looking for data to help support your work or your grant applications. So take a look at that. We'll be working on getting that updated to, I think, over the course of the next year as well. And it can be very helpful. Along with that Aspire data, we as the foundation, again, we're doing a lot of donor-directed funding that our donors in their field of interest might be aligned with. But we also are leaning in on a couple of things that we have pulled out of that Aspire data. So they have been working for a while on early literacy and grade level reading. Working with an organization called Excel by 8 on that. And then we've recently added also a food security pillar, and that kind of came out of post-COVID. It just felt like there was a lot of need in that area. We ran a local to access to local foods, grant cycle last fall. We're hopeful that we're going to be doing something of that nature this coming fall as well. And then I also forgot to mention, I talked about my colleague Jody here in Northwest Arkansas, the two of us, but we also work with Stacy Keenan, who is our executive director of our Fayetteville area affiliate. So that is the affiliate, when I've talked about this affiliate structure, that is the one affiliate here in Northwest Arkansas. They are targeted more toward Washington County fundings. You can always reach out to Stacy as well. And again, go to our website. You can look up information that the affiliate's supporting and other grant cycles and sign up for our grants newsletter. It's not on a regular cycle. It's just when we have something to send to you, but make sure you're on that list.
Wonderful, thank you. I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing their knowledge and information with us today. Thank you to them and all of you for being here in person. Hello, if you're live streaming us, thank you for joining us as well. And I wanted to ask for a round of applause for Fayetteville Public Library and Kelly Haley for organizing. And I wanted to do one more shameless plug before we leave for the Grant Professionals Association. I'm here as a member of that association. We support grant seekers, grants managers, and grants makers in their work. And so if you're sitting there thinking, well, gee, I don't know the difference between an outcome and an output, and what is a sustainability plan, please check us out. We are here for you. That is our full mission, is to make the grants process easier and more accessible and more equitable. So gpaarkansas.org. We offer scholarships, we offer free stuff. Our programming is free to students, so please check us out. We'd love to see you. Anything else, Kelly, that we need to say before we go?
I did want to say one more thing. On our webpage, we have calendar of events. This event is listed. By tomorrow, there will be a link to the panelists' biographies and website. So in case you get home and you forget names, dates, everything you heard today, you just refer back and we'll have their names and some of their info, and that might spark a memory. So check for it tomorrow.
All right, thank you all for coming. And if you haven't had the chance to check out Fayetteville Public Library's fantastic new facility, do it before you leave. Thank you all for coming, and thanks again to our panelists.
I almost walked away with